You're welcome back. This is NEWSFILE, your most authoritative news analysis show. It's brought to you by the kindest sponsorship of Star Assurance. That's your solid partner. Lipton Tea, inspiration flowing from nature. And Erata Motors, that's the best vehicles at the best prices. Of course, MTN. Welcome to the new world. I'm Samson Ladi Anyanimi, and my outfit, as always, is provided by Latida. Don't worry that it's not ironed. This is Ghana. For about 5 continuous days where I live in Dansuman, the lights, as if someone is just there. There's a kid in the power room somewhere fidgeting with it and playing games with it. We haven't had lights for quite a bit of the time. Very interesting in the country, and I understand that a lot of people are experiencing similar situations at a time when the President John Mahama has declared that the doomsday is over and told the whole world that, you know, we are doing so well, and comparing us, telling us a story using South Africa that we are doing so well in this side of the globe. Mr. President, I hope that this will be your major achievements at the end of your tenure. It's not good at all. Welcome to the show. Your views are welcome. 1422, that's a text line. Send them 1422. You can also post your comments on our Facebook wall or send them to newsfile@myjoyonline.com. Again, if you are my friend on Facebook, you can post your comments there. I'm back on Facebook. Thank you very much. My guests are seated. I have from my extreme right, Abdul Malik Kwekubaku Jr. He is editor-in-chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper. Next to him is Abraham Amalba. He is a member of the NDC legal team and a lecturer. Godwin Adawune, to my left, is a private legal practitioner, and he's also a lecturer. We'll be joined shortly by Gabi Asari Ochre Dako. He's the publisher of the New Statesman newspaper, and is a businessman who is based in the United Kingdom. Thank you very much. Join us with your thoughts on the issues that we are going to be looking at. But first of all, and strictly just taking about just a minute of comment from all of you on this very disturbing situation, but this man has gained his freedom after 14 years. I call him the innocent guilty. When I did my project at the LLB sometime in 2007 on the subject, pre-trial detainees turned convicted prisoners in Ghana. I dedicated it to the innocent guilty. At that time, about 40%, and that was the statistics, about 40% of the people on remand of the prison population were people on remand. And I doubted that statistic even at the time. I wonder what the number is now. It's very sad commentary on this country. 14 years. Wasted precious years in jail for nothing, and got how much? 200,000 Ghana cedis in damages. Specific questions to each one of you, and I'm looking at your competencies to deal with them. Mr. Bako, what happens to the prosecutors who were assigned to this man's case? Because as far as we know, Francis Ejari was dumped into the prison cells and forgotten of completely after he appeared in court and was given a week to return for whatever processes to continue. That was the very last time he ever appeared in court. The question is, well, now we are celebrating and we are happy he's gotten his freedom, but do we leave the system as it is? What happens to those prosecutors who were in charge of his case? Their bosses, were they submitting any reports to their bosses? Were their bosses demanding any reports from them at all?
Well. But this is a long-standing problem.
Right.
I've been to prison a couple of times, and there were people there who had been there about 10 years, 40 years, 50 years before I got there, and they were not convicts. Of course, in some category, they were murder suspects. Sometimes their cases are a bit drags, but still important, the element of justice. If you have not tried and convicted me, I ought not to be there unduly.
Right.
So there were people there. Some had been there 14 years, 10 years, 12 years. Kitikrachi prison, I met people like that. Kofodra prisons, I met people like that. In Saom, I met people. The same with the Osha Fort. So really, it's nothing new. What is new now is this dramatic success that has been achieved, and I'm supposed a lawyer undertook that exercise. Yes, I think we must commend him. I don't know how much he's going to get out of the...
He did it pro bono.
Fantastic. He's a fantastic gentleman. I salute him. But back to the substantive issue. It's a triangle. The police, the prisons, and the courts. This constitute the criminal justice system in its larger sense.
Right.
And that's where the problem is. We need to find out, because I don't know the specific details as to what this gentleman was arrested for, when he was arrested, by which police station and all the rest. I'm unable to be very specific. But generally speaking, clearly, but for this system,
okay.
yes, we have a certain system.
Justice for all program.
But for it, which was also, let's be honest, a response by state authorities, particularly the judiciary, to cure some of this mischief. This gentleman may have rot in there.
Right.
So the blame is clearly, as I said, it's a triangle, but I will go first for the prosecution, the police. It's those who effected his arrest. And it's them who must be sending him to court.
Exactly.
That's the first line. I'm not a lawyer. Fortunately, three of you are lawyers.
You know it. You're right.
So that's why I'll lay emphasis in terms of allocation of blame. But I wonder, the gentleman said he lost his wife. I'm not sure where he knows where his child
dropped out of school.
Yeah. Well, the money is not that big, but it's big enough for him to re-engineer his life.
Okay. Yeah. I meant to take very brief comments from you.
I'm sorry.
And Mr. Malba, tell me, like Poku mentioned, the prisons, the police, the judiciary, they all come together to make the system work. What did prison officials who discovered that this man's warrant had long expired, what did they do?
Yeah, good question.
Samson, it brings to sharp focus the institutional failures that our justice delivery system is embroiled with. You see, there are a number of these cases. I have done some work. Koku, he has been there, but I've also been there, but not a convicted prisoner, but to do some work in there.
Yeah, you used to belong to that group that visited the prisons.
Exactly. The Legal Resource Center.
Right.
We've visited in Sawam. We've gone to Cape Coast, Navrongo, and thereabout. The point has always been the lack of due diligence when it comes to investigations.
Sorry, Asaro Chiredako has just joined us. Good morning and welcome to the show. Okay. Anytime he gets to town, we get to drag him here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Samson, the problem has to do with that chain that you are talking about. That's the prisons, the police, the judiciary. The problem has to do with the lack of proper investigation. If we had done proper investigation in this gentleman's case, he wouldn't have even been sent to court in the first place.
But my specific question to you is, the prison officers also have a duty.
Yes.
You don't just accept anybody at all who is dumped there. And of course, they come there with warrants. When the warrant is expired, what is your duty? What did the prison officers assigned to him do? The prison's boss, who had the obligation to ensure that the people who are there were there legally, what did they do?
But sometimes you can't just jump to the prisons. I'm saying that investigations, if they were conducted properly, wouldn't have landed the man in jail. Now, when you get into the jail, you are brought there with a warrant.
Right.
Now, when your warrant expires, that warrant has to be renewed. Did they do that? I'm sure they didn't do that. Now, you cannot blame so much the courts, because the courts will only wait on the return date, you bring the accused person. But if you don't bring the accused person, the judges will not be able to determine whether the person was supposed to come or not. All that they will do is to adjourn your case to the next adjourned day. And so I think that what we should be doing is to have a collaboration, a link between the prisons, the police, and the judiciary. And there should be reports, daily reports on these prisoners.
Thank you.
Else, it is going to continue this way, and I know that this man's case is not the only one. There are more of those cases, and I'm sure this is going to open a Pandora's box for more people to come up with such cases.
Well, I think in a very serious country, maybe a commission will be set up over this matter because it's such embarrassing. Now, Abraham says rightly that it's not only the problem of the prison officials, but I'm asking the question. For example, if you had a commission set up to look into this, in the end, I expect that the prosecutor, I expect that the prosecutors or their bosses, I expect that the prison officer who was assigned to him and their bosses, all of these people will come in line, and someone must take some, you know, some liability. Otherwise, we'll continue in this same cycle. Now, the question is, he says if you don't produce the person in court the next day, the judge cannot do anything. Should that be the case? The judge who said, I remand you into prison to appear the next date. The next date happens, the prosecutor doesn't bring the prisoner, the accused person. Shouldn't the judge be interested in asking where the accused person is?
Yeah, the judge has to be interested because the record will show that this gentleman is supposed to be in court today. And someone has the responsibility to have brought him to court. And if that hasn't happened, the judge should demand an explanation. But you see, we play with human rights issues in this particular country. Although we have very elaborate provisions in our constitution purporting to protect human rights. Let me tell you a story. A couple of years ago, this was a murder case that we were involved in. The gentleman had been put on remand for 1 month. The Attorney General Department didn't come. We went again for about 3 months, and we asked the court to release the gentleman because the Attorney General Department clearly was showing no interest, and there was no basis to keep him there. The court said, if the gentleman had been there for 3 months, there is nothing wrong if you put him for another 1 month. This is a human rights issue. That tells you the mentality that we have. And I'm talking about the institutions towards issues of human rights. You are right on the issue of liability. Why should the state be burdened with this responsibility? Because some individuals fail to do the work they were tasked to do. I would have expected the court to have ordered that these individuals, if they are still available, be surcharged, I mean, with the cost of the damages, so that will at least serve as a deterrent to people in charge of such cases. We're supposed to take human rights issues as sacred issues, but we are paying lip service to them. And it's becoming very worrying, especially for people who are poor. I mean, they cannot afford the services of lawyers.
Right.
They have nobody to speak for them. So virtually they are there, with their rights being abused with reckless abandon.
Okay. Now, Gabi, finally to you, and I want you to also look at this aspect. He mentions they are unable to afford legal counsel and they are left there to languish, to rot. We have a legal aid system scheme in this country. What happened to it?
I think you're just reading my mind, actually. 2 weeks ago in England, barristers and solicitors went on a demonstration because the government had cut down legal aid. You know, so the lawyers themselves, because they are, if you like, the ones who are to go and defend accused persons, and they know that without legal aid, a lot of these accused persons would not have access to justice. So they stood up against that. Maybe you should ask yourself, what is our bar association doing about this matter? You know, because really, I would expect that it's something that the bar association can take on seriously. So that's the first thing, because without legal aid, they are just thrown into the bin, as it were, and left to rot. That's basically what it is. Right. And it's more expensive to the state, because if you put an innocent person in jail for 14 years, it costs you for in terms of keeping the person in jail. You know, and there are a lot of people who are behind bars and ought not to be there.
Right.
You know, and so it's more expensive that way. And I think, first of all, I disagree with you slightly that the individuals ought to be surcharged. I think the state ought to take the blame, and it's up to the state to ensure that individuals within these institutions undertake their responsibilities. Because at the end of the day, judges have a responsibility, as you said. They don't do anything about it. The state prosecutors don't. But I think that the Bar Association, in particular, can do more to protect the rights of individuals, because that's what lawyers are supposed to do.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and we hope that something seriously will be done about this situation so that we don't leave it to just this single man and go to sleep after today. Thank you very much indeed, gentlemen. Your text messages are welcome. 1422, that's the text line, 1422. You can post your comments on our Facebook wall or send them to newsfile@myjoyonline.com. Now, we want to go first to the very first issue, which is about the Honorable Alban Bagbin, who talks about MPs taking bribes. Call it the confession of the MP. Now, we are asking, what is the reality? Is it not the case that they really do take bribes in the situations that Alban Bagbin describes? What outcomes are we expecting from the MPs who have been so accused, setting up a panel of judges of themselves to probe themselves? What will be the most effective way to deal with this situation? We are hoping to speak to the majority leader and the minority leader, as yesterday they finished their job on this matter, asking that an inquiry be done, and subsequently Bagbin will be around to answer to their charges. Let's now just take a listen to Mr. Bagbin and also the majority leader in the House of Parliament yesterday.
You know, the reality is that MPs are Ghanaians. Yes, and so there is some evidence. There is some evidence that some MPs take pride, and they come to the floor and try to articulate the views of their sponsors. You understand? Yeah. Because Ghana will not develop what we call lobbying. There are rules, there are ethics surrounding lobbying. And so we think that lobbying is taking money to go and give to some MPs and writing your piece for them to articulate on the floor. That is bribing. Lobbying is a profession which is done all over the world. Try to lobby the like the civil society organizations. You want to lobby Parliament. There's a way of doing it without it being seen as bribing.
The Right Honourable Speaker himself, in opening the first post-budget workshop for committee chairpersons, ranking members and sub-backbenchers of Parliament, organized from the 6th to the 8th of March 2013 at Kofredua, advised against the dependence of parliamentary committees on MDAs as well as the interface between such committees and other stakeholders in consideration and facilitation of parliamentary business. Pursuant to this admonition, the House on the 4th of July 2013 constituted a committee chaired by the Honourable Member for Naduli Kaleu to draft a code of conduct for members of Parliament. The House is aware that this committee has held a series of meetings and is in the process of finalizing a report which is to be laid before this House. Mr. Speaker, it must be stated that it is in the interest of this country to help strengthen Parliament to perform its functions effectively. It is in this regard that the leadership of the House has taken particular interest in the allegations attributed to the Honourable Member for Naduli Kaleu. The House accordingly asked the leadership to engage the member concerned on the matter and advise Parliament on it. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Member is still out of the jurisdiction on official assignment, and leadership would engage him on his return. Leadership assures that whatever is appropriate would be done to elicit the truth in this matter, and no effort will be spared in this regard. Notwithstanding, leadership pursuant to the mandate for the time being given by the House appeals to any person who may have any evidence to present such information to the Clerk of Parliament for onward transmission to leadership.
That's the Majority Leader in Parliament, Dr. Benjamin Kumbo. And I'll start with you, Gabi. I don't know what you think. The scenario that Bagwin narrates and says that there's evidence that MPs take bribes. Do you think it qualifies for bribe, strictly so to speak?
Well, I'm not in a position to know better than Alban Bagwin, and I wouldn't claim to be in such a position. But I think that it is a legitimate concern. And I think it is more legitimate in the sense that I stand to be corrected. But do we have code of conduct for parliamentarians?
We don't have it yet. They are now thinking of what?
Absolutely. You know, and this is common practice wherever you go. We don't have that. And in the absence of that, then, because if you notice, lobbying itself is double-edged. It can be for good lobbying and it can be for bad lobbying, you know, in terms of powerful influence against the rest of us, or the other way, you know, against, if you like, powerful interests. So lobbying itself is not necessarily a bad thing, although it's been given a bad name. But where you don't have rules covering how you can do proper lobbying in terms of ethics and the moralities of it, then of course we have these difficulties. So I don't think they should run away from it. I think they should address it. Because, look, was it not this week that we heard about the Ridge Hospital matter? Apparently is overpriced by almost twice what it's supposed to be. I think, according to the Crown Agent report, is 142 million or 145 million or so overpriced, and it should have been $165 million instead of the 306 or whatever it is. So, but then you speak to the, I listened to Jifa, interviewed vice chairman of the finance committee that looked into it and recommended it to the whole house, and basically he said, well, we're happy with it. But on what basis? You know, so I think the problem is where you don't have, first of all, a parliament that has the capacity to undertake due diligence, to have research material. You go to the US Congress, they have a whole section, you know, section 4 research. They have policy analysts, about 400 of them, who provide the members, the congressmen and women, with information, unadulterated information.
Okay, so let's get a bit practical here. Let's try if this is a good example. You're asking the question, on what basis did the chairman of the finance committee, or is it the minister, okay that this was okay? You know, on what basis? And I'm asking, is it lobbying if those who need this facility went to parliament or called the members of parliament to a meeting and paid for their TNT and for their breakfast and lunch and explained to them that we need how many blocks, we need how many wards, we need this kind of equipment to be in there, and we'll get them from so and so for this amount, and that's what it is. Is it bribery?
I'm getting to that. So imagine that I'm an MP, and you've paid for this horrible tea that I'm drinking, and then you've given me some biscuits, okay? And of course, you've paid for my transport, and you've given me your side of the story. Fortunately, whether you paid my TNT or not, I have information, independent information, from the Research Department of Parliament, which contradicts what you are telling me. Whatever influence that you seek to give me would be somehow counterbalanced by the information that's been given to me, because I'm just an MP. I may not have the capacity to do the research that is required. So where you have absence of research capacity, and at the same time Parliament is not financially equipped to undertake its own work, if you need to go to Ashanti Goldfields or whatever, they have to sponsor that, then you have that difficulty. You know, so I would not blame the MPs so much, because at the end of the day they have to go there to see it for themselves. And as they have to do that, as to who sponsors it, it's up to the state, it's up to Parliament to undertake that. But I think whatever money you can give, whether it's legitimate or not, it has to be covered by rules. And secondly, if you give the money, the TNT, and I have information which contradicts yours, then I'll be checked.
Okay, hold it on there. Now, shall we define bribery before our legislators do so? What is bribery differentiated from lobbying?
That is a very difficult thing to do with respect to the jobs of the MP. Now let us look at the issues this way. Suppose there is before Parliament a bill, let's say on domestic violence, and you have an NGO or a group of organizations that are very committed to eradicating domestic violence from our system. And let's also say that the process of passing this bill into law is being dragged, so there's delay. And these groups want the process to be, quickened. And they adopt various methods. They demonstrate, no results. They use the media, no results. Then they decide that let's get these MPs to a very beautiful venue and give them very sumptuous meals and very tasty beverages and give them all the comfortable treatment with the view to getting them to work on this bill faster than they are doing. They're seeking to influence it. Now, let's say that at the end of the process, they give out envelopes and then label them for petrol, and the MPs take. These envelopes, they don't account to Parliament. They put in their pockets and then they go home and they spend. Clearly, these things were given to them. They haven't accounted for them. Because we don't have a rule that says that when you get these monies, come and then account. So they take them. Then the next day, they are in Parliament, arguing very vigorously that the bill must become law and all of that. A picture like this, can we say this is bribery? Because there is a public interest element in what they are doing. The groups are definitely not seeking any private benefit from this. It's something that the entire society is going to benefit from. Their concern has to do with the speed, and all that they have done is to ensure that that speed is obtained. I wouldn't describe this as bribery, properly so-called, as to constitute an evil. But let's see that...
Is it a healthy society or a sick one that has its MPs who need to be galvanized in the manner you are saying before they do their jobs for which they are paid every month?
Fine.
And the whole of this week they have been late in the House. Yeah. At one point you had about 70 of them being absent without permission, and you have about 30 of them this week being absent with permission. What is that?
So that constitutes a different problem.
Obviously, if they had been invited to another meeting
they would have been
where
there.
There would be some very good, per diem, which is not a bribe, they would have attended.
Precisely. But that constitutes a different problem from the one we are discussing now. But let's say that that problem will then give rise to the kind of activity that these hypothetical NGOs may be undertaking. So, in my opinion, this picture will not represent an example of bribery.
What is bribe?
Good. From my perspective, you bribe a public official by inducing him with whatever you may have for the purpose of influencing the performance of his public duties in your benefit, to benefit you. So we are looking at a private
So it's
game.
okay when we go to public offices or government agencies and you drop a brown envelope so that your application can be fast-tracked.
That's bribery.
Is it okay?
That's bribery.
That's bribery.
Because, it's...
But you just gave the example that the NGO would call them to sort of seek to fast-track it, and that is not bribery.
There are two things here. In the case of the individual, he is seeking a private gain.
He's seeking a private gain. He's entitled, the Constitution says that he's entitled to work, to earn a living. And he's seeking a job, or he's asking a passport officer to get his passport done for him. what is private, really private gain about it?
The point where I disagree with you has to do with the NGO is seeking to ensure that the bill is passed. Now you are saying that this individual is entitled to have his, what do we call it, his passport. There may be bureaucratic obstacles explaining why he's not getting it, I mean, as speedy as he would. Now, if he pays the money, you will notice that certain things will have to be done. Other people may have to be sacrificed for him to get it, and that is the evil. So, I mean, there are basic differences between them.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Just hold it there and come to you, Abdul Malik. Following the discussion so far, does it come to you as any surprise what Mr. Bagwin talks about?
Well,
is it new to you?
The Bagwin allegation, as specific as it is new. The strict proof is on him. I don't see why we are attempting to generalize the issue or to interrogate a perception or an abstraction. The point that, oh, we are all human beings and we are prone to corruption, bribery and the rest is not the issue here. A member of parliament, a long-standing member of parliament, has made a specific allegation to the effect that there is evidence that some MPs take bribes and go on the floor of the House to do advocacy.
Exactly.
Yes, why aren't we putting him to strict proof? Why are we trying to generalize the issue, to look at lobbying and the resource constraint of parliament and all that before? And so in the process, we create a forest of issues and hide the Bagwin tree. You cannot identify the Bagwin tree because there's a forest out there, a huge one. I am insisting that the honorable member of parliament, considering his stature and status, has made a specific allegation. He ought to provide evidence to support it. Who hasn't been discussing the resource constraint parliament faces? Who? It's an old issue. The question of parliament seeking sponsorship from parliamentary committees seeking sponsorship from organizations is an old issue.
Right.
Members of parliament on the floor of the House have made calls for parliament to be resourced, to be provided with constituency offices, with research assistants, with so many things. I have all the Hansards here to prove it. Chinwe Hesse's report, they recommended the need for offices and the rest. President Mills in his State of Nation address did the same.
And Job 600 has been going on forever.
Has been going for how many years? There was a World Bank $25 million initially. All those things are issues that we discussed, and we discussed them within the context in which they ought to be discussed. Now, a bribery allegation has been made by a senior, long-standing member of parliament. We ought to look at that first. That's the issue before us. Right. And I think that it is important. I'm happy that he has accepted the challenge to appear before parliament. That is the committee. His colleagues should stop behaving as if they were ostriches. Where was he all the time? See, let me give you a classic, and this is where parliament itself has to stand up. The PC, Bagwin himself, when on 6th, this is Hansard, 6th July 2009, Chumesi appeared, they were discussing the government of Ghana and IDA GPRC agreement. Okay, and in the course of the deliberation, Chumesi appeared made some allegations, allusions to PC appears allegation of $5,000 bribe. Bagwin came in forcefully, quoted the Standing Order 30 and 31, and then requested the Speaker to refer the matter to the Privileges Committee. You hear him. The matter of the allegation made by Honorable PC Apiofori on the issue that Honorable Felix Chumesi Appiah had just mentioned. And this is a matter I believe we must get to the bottom, because it actually affects the dignity and reputation of Parliament as an institution and members of Parliament as a whole, and erodes the fabric of democracy in this country. I believe this is a serious matter that our committee should deal with expeditiously and let the whole world know what actually happened. And I think we are able, if we are able to do that, and we are able to convince the generality of the populace, definitely we will be on a very good course. I suspected that if no action was taken with this matter, these exchanges will be erupting. It is good that it has come today. It has come today when the matter was to be referred. At the end of the day, the Speaker ruled that that matter should be referred to the Privileges Committee, and it was. Then, incidentally, Honorable Duajaho, who today is the Speaker, was the chairman of the Privileges Committee. Now, don't forget that when PC also made his allegation, he said that Ajaho was a source relative to that particular allegation. Now, this is the drama unfolding. I've been trying in the last few days to check what happened to that referral to the Privileges Committee.
Right.
Blank space. Yeah.
Who was the Minister of Health when the Rich Hospital contract was signed?
This one, yeah. I'm not too sure. I don't
it
know.
appears
I don't want
was,
to speculate.
was Mr. Bagni at the time.
Amazing.
That's the answer he's looking for from you.
Mischief.
Now this is what you do. Kuku, you may have to hold on there for me briefly.
Yeah, okay.
Let me come to Abraham Emmanuel.
Okay.
Now, you hear Babing say a number of things and make references to they being called over this 40s, merchant bank matters, right? And the way, they needed to be, as it were, giving their TNTs and help to be able to understand the issues. You feel that these are normal situations and we should not interrogate them the manner in which we are doing now?
Bagwen's revelation or allegation for me reminds me of my own issue with the judiciary. I remember when 4 lawyers, including myself, made similar allegations and were taken to the cleaners. But in this instance, particular case, I see Parliament approaching it from a more professional way, where Parliament has accepted the challenge and has agreed to put up a committee to look into it. Whereas in our case, we were blacklisted completely and we didn't have the opportunity to state our case. I see this as a challenge to Parliament to look inwards within itself to try to deal with these perceptions. Indeed, there have been a number of research work from GII. You also have the
Ghana Integrity Initiative.
We also have Transparency International, which has done some research on perception of corruption in Ghanaian society. And Parliament came up either third or so after the police and the executive. So this is the time that we will say that Parliament will now have the opportunity to exercise this allegation. I hear Alban Bagwin say that, is there corruption in the Ghanaian society? If your answer is yes, then there's corruption in Parliament. I hear Alban Bagwin say that, is there corruption within the executive? Because every day we put the executive under the carpet.
That is the general part of the statement.
Exactly.
But he narrows into very specific
Exactly. So I'm saying that when you situate what he said, he's just telling you that Parliament as an institution is a subset of the Ghanaian society. And if you are complaining about corruption within the Ghanaian society, you cannot isolate Parliament. That's the first point. Indeed, he goes on to then make the specific allegation that he has evidence to show that some parliamentarians take bribe. At this juncture, I would then request him to provide evidence, because he didn't just make a blanket statement. He said there's evidence to show. But you see, the one who, for me, commenting on this matter, came across as a person who is not consistent was the minority leader on this matter. Indeed, not long ago, there was a magazine that indicated that Ghana was a corrupt country. And I heard him accept wholeheartedly that statement and indeed indicated that it was true because former President Rawlings had said it, it was true because somebody had said it, and he was counting a number of people who said so. But in this particular case, he is challenging Alban Bagwin to produce evidence to show that Parliament was corrupt. So if you accept the claim that Ghana, the universal set, is corrupt, why would you then be contesting the claim that a subset in that universal set is corrupt? And you are now calling for evidence. Consistency in this matter, for me, is very key. Parliament, as an institution, would agree that there is the perception out there about the fact that it is not operating in ways that would ensure transparency. Parliament is aware that people indicate that they go in there, they do the bidding of other people, and do not apply the rules in such a way as to suit the Ghanaian people. I think that in this instant case, a committee set by Parliament will not be the best to do. I've heard Parliament calling people to come and give evidence. I think it's misplaced. Because under our laws, the giver and the taker of bribery or corrupt practices are guilty of the offense. So I'm wondering who, in his right senses, would go and say, I once upon a time gave money to Mr. MP for this. So I think that's
another leg of the discussion.
I think that they should look at that aspect of it and see what they can do about it.
That's another leg of the discussion. And I want to ask Gabi whether you think, aside the questions of lobbying, if subsequently maybe we have the rules and that is allowed, if it is proper for the parliamentarians of Ghana to accept the current position that when a bill has to come to the House, they have to be invited by one body or the other, or the executive, so to speak, which is sponsoring the bill, to take them to one retreat or the other before they do it, and they get paid, you know, aside what they receive as their salaries or sitting allowances. Now, let's get a few of your text messages. Simon from Walwale says, these unsubstantiated bribery allegations leveled against our legislators has the tendency of denting the image of the country's parliament in the international community. Okay, maybe it's already done. So now from Ata Imoro from Wellensi says, who says Bagwin is wrong? That's a question. In fact, he's more than right. Ghana today is being referred to as the quote-unquote Republic of Corruption. Africa Watch magazine. Parliament is an entity in Ghana. Hence, by logical deduction, some parliamentarians, if not all, are corrupt. Park Ganiwu sends this one from Saviligo. He says, when will my country Ghana allow the truth to bounce no matter how bitter it is? Must we continue to be like ostriches, or do we need a spectacle to view similarly to Mr. Bagwin and PC Appeal for and so on? Thank you for those messages. I'll return shortly to look at those of you who are sending some from California and so on. Now, my question.
Well, I think to me, you can't answer the question without answering the question, where is the code of conduct? You know, because
in the absence of the code of conduct, Gabi, we have best practices, and our parliamentarians are aware of them.
But best practices come from code. You know, you have code of conduct, and then you go about it. Because, you know, there are two ways. They have to go and do their work. It has to be paid for. As a country, we have to ask ourselves, should it be paid for by Parliament or by government? South Africa has I think they have a template of a code of conduct for their parliament. It doesn't matter if it's paid by government in South Africa in that sense, you know, and you don't have to disclose it because it's accepted as the government will pay for it, you know. But like I said, it's not an issue about government paying for it, because when government pays for it, it's transparent. Everybody knows that government has paid for it, whether it's parliament or a particular ministry. But what is the capacity of the parliamentarians to undertake
independent research or
Absolutely.
due diligence?
To me, that is very critical, because whether it's coming from the ministry, or I can't see it influencing members of parliament by giving them that amount of, unless of course there are different rates. You know, I mean, I managed to influence members of parliament who even had a contrary view to what I had on STX without paying them anything. You know, so if you have the information, I'm talking about the minority, to a point they thought STX was a good deal, but then we provided them with the information, they listened to it, and then turn around.
When you say we, you're referring to Danko Institute?
Yes, yeah, I'm no longer there, am I? But of course, once a founder. You know, so I think really it is the value of the information that members of parliament have. And look, if we focus on, because look, it is unforgivable that over 20 years after parliament working, we don't have a code of conduct for parliament. It's unforgivable. It's unforgivable. I mean, really, and it's not so difficult to find a code of conduct. It's Africa. Even if you have a DSTV subscription, a code, I think Regulation 7, you have to state it. You know, if the sponsorship by DSTV, you have to state it. I mean, and we need to have this in place. Once you have it in place, the MPs themselves will be guided by it. They know what they can do and what they can't do. And when you fall foul of it, we know how to deal with you. Let's get it in place. And in defense of Minority Leader, he said he is not aware of bribery. And I said, you know, the definition of bribery is a bit difficult. But he's saying that he doesn't doubt that because of his long standing in Parliament, Bagbin may have information that he's not aware, and Bagbin should bring further and better particulars. I think let's be fair with Minority Leader, but really
he's saying that why is it that he didn't ask Africa Watch magazine to bring further and better particulars, but accepted it?
I think no, his focus was that it is a bad publication. It puts us in the bad light. And I think really, of course, whether there are further and better particulars...
When it appeared to put the presidency in bad light or the government in bad light,
I heard him
he was okay with it.
He wasn't okay with it. He was unhappy with the publication. No. And he made it absolutely clear. He said, no, this is bad for our image. No. You know, and of course, he was genuinely worried.
All right.
Would you not be?
Okay, Gabi,
I think that you are trying to embellish what he said. He was categorical and indicated that if other members of government have said the same thing, what is new about this publication? And so he agrees with it. That's the point he made.
All right.
He didn't ask further questions.
Just
further and better, but he didn't say that.
Right.
Maybe it's in the publication.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, my tea is finished. Unfortunately, mine is not horrible. It's very nice. Gabi doesn't like the way you did his, so take the instructions and get it done properly for him.
That's about it. Yeah?
Okay. Now, Kuku, I don't know again if this is a good example. I mean, I have known that, for example, an entity maybe as small as multimedia, the JoyNews room, if you attend an assignment by an event organizer and you demand or you are giving TNT and you accept it, it's an offense that can get you out of the system. It's sackable. I'm asking, why is that so? The thinking is that it has the potential of influencing you. The august House of Parliament, such an important arm of government, should it continue to take the so-called TNT? And we know that sometimes it's not really TNT, even though it's called TNT.
Yeah.
It's in hundreds and thousands of dollars.
Oh, wow.
But admittedly, that is not the same thing that Bagui was saying. Indeed, even in his own submissions, he drew a line between the two. So I am not going to box the two. Otherwise, we've discussed the subject matter many times, here and elsewhere. You recall not too long ago, when the RAG matter was raging, there was this point about the Public Accounts Committee having written a letter to RAG for sponsorship to Gambia. You recall, it became an issue. And at that point in time, the issue was that because some actions or conduct of the company was being investigated, it may amount to a conflict of interest for Parliament to get itself boxed in that situation. Then people even recalled some boreholes program that the company wanted to give to constituencies, which had been in the offering a year or so before even those controversies occurred. It became an issue.
Right.
And in the course of my research, I realized that many other committees of parliament write letters for sponsorship from various organizations, both local and international. And parliament itself as an institution also is dependent on some donor agencies for many of the infrastructural developments and things they were undertaking there. From that perspective, you can say that, look, looking at the character of parliament, we as a nation might as well try and resource parliament to the extent that it will become progressively less dependent on sources that could influence it. That's a subject matter I'm prepared to discuss. And I'm saying there is nothing new, even going to the Hansard. Parliament itself has been seized with those issues and have discussed it, have tried to make some, put in place some measures, except that they haven't really been, haven't crystallized in a complete manner. That is the extent from the bargaining thing. And I'm a bit worried that there's an attempt to bring all these issues on board. I'm not naive to say there's no linkage between the two. But look, it's like saying that when the poor man steals and he tells the judge that, look, it's my economic circumstances that led me to steal, then he's purged of the guilt. And in any case, rich men also steal. So the bottom line is this: if there's evidence, and I'm glad, but I mean beyond his initial attempts to dodge, has now come clean.
Right.
To say that there is evidence, he will provide the evidence. So please, that is critical, because you know what? Even the provision of that evidence may help to resolve some of these problems we are talking about. In looking at the evidence, it may throw light on where and how things are being done.
Okay.
So first and foremost, the honorable member should be subjected to strict proof
By
the Committee of Parliament, Privileges Committee.
you think that is competent enough to do this job?
You know, let me tell you why. They may not come out with anything that you may find desirable, just like the appeal for written, as I'm saying.
Right.
It's blank space. I saw blank space, so that can grow cynicism relative to what Parliament can do. But there's a catch. If you are a member of Parliament, and a senior one at that, and you are summoned by this committee to appear before you don't appear, there are sanctions. Now, if you appear and you are unable to substantiate, there are sanctions. It helps in the sense that at least if he's unable to provide evidence before that committee, that record is public. It will be published. And we will know that an honorable member peddled, and I'm going to be very charitable, an obvious untruth, which had the potential to denigrate the integrity of the whole house. That's why the fact that he didn't say all MPs. The fact that he didn't mention names makes it very dangerous. Every other MP is a suspect out there. So that is why, because see, an independent commission, which commission? which independent committee of inquiry is going to summon him? And if he comes and he says, I won't cooperate, what else? What happens? But within Parliament, if he comes fair, he provides evidence, it helps us to move forward. If he comes, he doesn't produce evidence, it will be made public, and he would have lost something in terms of integrity. Parliament at least would have purged itself of some of the debt. Look, we have instances. In 1981, Dr. Liman, then president, at a public rally, made an allegation against a member of the minority, in this case Dr. John Sofurata, that he had gone to the UK, stayed with Henry Jabba, collected some monies, and had come back home to try and force a motion in the House for AFIC convicts and things to be redeemed or freed. And it became a huge controversy. The matter was referred to the Committee of Privileges. If you check the Hansard of 20th May 1981, the report is there. At the end of the day, the committee established that there was no substance to the allegation that the president had made. It was a precedent. And there was so much debate in Parliament, but bottom line, Dr. Joseph Rata said, fine, now at least on record, they couldn't drag the president before the Committee of Privileges. That was a limitation they couldn't overcome. Right. But at least public record showed that the allegation, a very serious allegation made by a very serious personality and in the public domain, had no substance.
Right.
It was a cure of a certain mischief.
You
Henry
support
Jalbert still went to court and got his stuff.
right. You support the school of thought that says that this will be self-serving, and so they ought not to be seen to constitute themselves into judges in their and sit and adjudicate their own matter. What is the alternative? We are aware that Shraj, for example, suggests that it may border on questions of conflict of interest also, and you know what the law is per the Atani judgment, that there ought to be an identifiable individual who makes that complaint before Shraj will be mandated to look into that matter. What is the way out?
I think Parliament is capable of referring the matter to Shraj, for Shraj to do some diligent work on it. And also, if Parliament washes its hands off in terms of the investigation, whatever results may come out may be seen as more credible than if Parliament itself conducts the investigation. But you see, let's not behave like the proverbial ostrich who would bury his head in the sand, and because it doesn't see anybody, it doesn't know that the rest of its body is being seen. You see? It is not everything which is true that can be proven. And that's a fact.
So we journalists, we are entitled to peddle anything we want to peddle. And you subject us to strict proof all the time.
I'm coming. Take for instance, when we were children, you followed your friend to the mother's kitchen, and he took a piece of meat from the mother's soup and ate. You go and tell them, your friend's mother that your son has picked the meat. Then you say, proof. Are you going to cut the stomach open and bring the meat?
Why would you do that? You didn't get a piece of the meat.
Why would I report to them?
Oh, Amaliba.
So you see, it's not everything which is true. Because let's be fair. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. And I'm sure this is what happened to Alban Babin. Alban did not envisage that there will be a day like this that he'll be called upon to account for what he's going to say. So he may not be taking pictures of the bribery allegations. So this issue, and I'm saying this to counter Kokubako's insistence on strict proof, strict proof.
Yeah,
look, there's a perception out there. Perception is as equally important as the reality. So how would Parliament, this is an opportunity for Parliament to cleanse itself of that perception.
Without knowing the truth.
No.
Your suggestion is that Parliament should now lodge a complaint with Shraj.
With Shraj, and allow Shraj to go on with the investigations on this matter. What would they
must bring something?
No, he would appear. He will appear before it. And Bagbin, I'm happy you have a writing here. I've seen it here. If you could borrow it.
Sure.
I am ready to defend MP's bribery claim, Bagbin. So he's not running away. And so if he's that ready, I think that he should be putting together his dossier to go and meet Shraj. I think that would be the proper body to undertake this type of exercise.
Godwin, should Parliament do it itself or some other body do it?
There are two ways. The Privileges Committee is there to determine certain issues. And clearly, I mean, in my opinion, this is one of such issues that it has the mandate to handle.
I thought their job was restricted to disciplinary action of conduct that was, you know,
but if
insulting to the Parliament.
So suppose
privilege, contempt of Parliament,
right?
And this could amount to that.
So suppose Honorable Bagbin is unable to provide evidence, that would then have been a basis for him to be disciplined in respect of what he has done. But the other aspect has to do with courting public confidence in the process. And that is where I believe Mr. Malva and then the others are coming from. That for the public to have confidence that the issue will be looked at properly, then it is advisable that an external body like Shraj or any other body with similar jurisdiction can handle it. But
and also because the precedent shows that they may not do anything about it after all. Because you look at the PC appeal for a matter.
Well, I think that we should be able to distinguish the two situations.
What's it to be distinguished?
in this particular context, I heard Bagbin on another platform say that he has evidence and that when he comes, he will provide evidence. And he even made mention of certain individuals who had said that they did that. And he said the individuals are alive. So this is clearly a case where the person alleging the issue says that he has the means or the material to prove the allegation. But appear for this thing, I can't remember, but you can correct me. He's saying that he's ready to prove. I mean, he said that, and I remember he was being interviewed, I mean, what do you have? And he said that there was corruption and bribery was taken.
We don't have a report from Parliament saying that he was unwilling to cooperate and because of that they were unable to go on with it.
Yeah,
well,
but no communication to that effect.
Well, but
that's what I'm hearing, but no communication, formal communication to that effect.
But I mean, Bagbin is more forthright, I mean, now than Mr. Pierre-Fore was then.
Okay.
So the two situations should be distinguished.
Right.
But sometimes let's be careful not to kill the zeal of people who, belonging to a group, would want to fight ills within the group. Because I feel that...
Where is the example?
No.
Mr. Bagbin has been in Parliament for how many, God knows, years?
Because
and where was the zeal?
I think
even
that
with the appeal for rating, he came in and
don't forget where Amaba is coming from.
Because you see, who is better placed to discuss or exercise ills within a group that you belong to than the person himself?
So why had it been hiding the evidence all this time?
Such people like Bagbin are an endangered species. Because when we do that, people will go underground and will not want to fight ills within the group.
I see.
And I think that we should encourage people like that.
Right.
But he must prove his point.
Samson, I think
he must prove his point.
Bagbin has been encouraging us. I think really, whether a Shraj or the Privileges Committee, whatever committee, it's about evidence. It's about evidence. Bottom line. Because, I mean, if you go with evidence to a parliamentary committee, and then they somehow push it aside, of course it will become public. Sure. So I'm not so bothered about where it is head. I think Parliament is capable to deal with this matter. And I think we can achieve the two. What Kweku is asking for, that is there evidence to the allegation? That is the first step. But beyond that, Parliament itself can look at the bigger picture and say this and that ought to be addressed. Because the issues raised by Bagbin goes also beyond the specific allegation. So you deal with the specific allegation, and then you look at the, if you like, the weaknesses within the system.
It is the attempt to hide the Bagbin thing.
No,
being that one, that worries me.
But they must deal with the evidence. They must deal with the evidential matter first. And then, yes, because I know there have been issues where, you know, the Parliament can be said, look, you had leadership of Parliament, both sides, being flown by STX to Dubai, drinking champagne and doing all, and they came back and they were mightily impressed. And we're going to go ahead with it. But then when they were presented with contrary evidence, they were prepared to look that way. Right. So at the end of the day, it's also the capacity issue and the rest of it. But let's deal with it. Let's deal with all of that. But look at the specific allegation and go beyond that.
This issue is gaining it's becoming positive to Parliament, because they've already gone out to look for their code of conduct, which was in a cabinet guarding that.
It was work in progress.
You know, so they have already gone there because it has kicked them in the bottom. So something
I thought Bagbin is the man who was leading that.
Exactly. So they've gone back to it.
Didn't need this allegation unsubstantiated to trigger what you are talking about.
The platform has not been given yet.
Okay, gentlemen, let me share a few of the messages coming from our viewers and listeners. Frederick Lesson in California says the Parliament of Ghana isn't just corrupt, but they are bullied and turned into a rubber stamp house. Some of the debates they have in the House is just ridiculous. Significant bills such as Right to Information Bill, Disability Act and others are shelved for debate on GMOs. Jesse Boakon in Mamprobi says any brown envelope in public institution is not a gift but pure bribe. Honorable Alban Bagbin is not the first person to admit MPs take bribe. Corruption under the current administration is worse. Al-Hassan Muhammad in Nandom writes, I think in Ghana we talk too much. It is time for us to walk our talk. you didn't identify yourself. You say there is a vast difference between lobbying and bribery. Lobbying is when facts and ideas are brought to the fore with the intention of convincing one. But bribery is simply selling your conscience for personal gain. It's called the Judas effect. Well, and that is where I am reliably informed that Abdul Malik Okubako is presently is trending on social media for saying, be careful not to create a forest of trees and then hide the bagbin tree. Thank you very much. We take a quick break at this point, and I will return to deal with Nana Addo's return from where? Is it Achia Mountains? We'll come to discuss his revelation and what is up for him in 2016 without a free SHS message.